Talk about it. Back with us now is Bob Cusack. There's Bob. Kurt Bardella also rejoins us, handled those questions in fine fashion. Maybe Harris will do the same. We'll see. And we're joined now by May Melman. May's the former White House Associate Counsel in the Trump administration. Welcome, May. And let me start with you, since you're new to the conversation and we're getting ready for Trump in Michigan. That's the state. I said to Bob earlier, Trump probably needs one of the blue wall states where he seems to be the most challenged. In other words, the numbers for Harris are better in Michigan than they are in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. How does Trump win there?
Yeah, so if I talk to my friends who are on the campaign, they are very confident about Michigan. They think, oh, the Democrats say that they're going to win it, but, you know, they're out of their mind. So I do think that there's a huge union push, but then I also think that it's just normalcy. This is a middle class, working class state. And when you have Kamala Harris, who has pronouns in bio, no matter where you see them in social media, it feels out of touch. It feels overly leftist, progressive. And Michigan is a state that they're not going to forget that the governor shut them down. They want their economy back. They want their border back. And I think that appeal to normalcy is the strategy. I don't know
the pronouns and the bio, whether that's normal or abnormal, but I think the point that we get at here, Kurt, is the working class vote, right, that I was just referring to in some of these places, because Obama did great with just working class Americans in general. Yeah. A lot of times people say white working class voters, but whatever you want to say, working class voter. Obama did great, but then they started to go back to Trump, right? Biden, especially the Hillary election, Biden got him back a little bit, enough to win. What about this time around, how Harris fares with those types of voters versus Biden? Is that a potential weakness for her?
I don't think it is, because I look at right now, the difference between 2024 versus years past is this rise of popularity with unions. You know, and new numbers came out this morning. I was reading in Axios that unions actually are at an all-time popularity high with the American public. And we just saw J.D. Vance today campaigning and getting booed at the firefighters union. And when I think of those type of on-the-ground workers who are in our factories, who are doing, you know, the quote-unquote blue-collar jobs, I think that there's a hard connect for someone like Donald Trump at this point to sell the point that I'm for you, but I keep giving tax breaks to your bosses. I don't think that act is going to work in 2024. We've seen it over and over again. We've seen it in agriculture. We've seen it in manufacturing towns. Trump makes big promises to bring back plants and jobs, and that ends up not happening that way, as well as the fact that every Republican voted against things that help these communities, like the Inflation Reduction Act, like the infrastructure bill, like the CHIPS Act. There's an actual positive record of the economy that Kamala Harris can run on here that plays really well in these working class states and communities.
Yeah, Alro Steel, that's the name of the facility. Looking at it live right now in Potterville, Michigan, Eaton County, where Trump is holding this event. So the idea, obviously, as I've said a few times, seems to be focused on the economy. He's got jobs up on the stage there. It's a company that makes cut-to-size metals and plastics. They have a bunch of locations, but this is obviously the one that they're focused on. Bob, I mentioned that it's in a congressional district where Congresswoman Slotkin is part of her district, not the whole district in that county. But what about that Senate race? Because that's another thing that you guys pulled on. These Senate races and how they interact with the presidential race. There's the numbers for Slotkin over Mike Rogers. She's up, but Democrats actually I believe on the DDHQ side, I have the Senate map that we look at. She's up, but they need not only that, they basically, Bob, need to run the table, right, if they want to have control of the Senate. Here it is, 51-47 is our starting point. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right, Connell. I mean, West Virginia's gone because Manchin's not running, and he's going to face a tough re-election in West Virginia. So that means Democrats have to win basically every race, and that's assuming that the Democrats don't win Texas, where Ted Cruz is up, and Florida. And honestly, Cruz and Rick Scott are favored. So other than that, whether it's Michigan or Pennsylvania or New Mexico, the list goes on and on. Of course, Montana, Ohio. Democrats have to win all of these races. They're doing well now. They've got strong candidates, but it's hard to get a straight flush.
That's the thing. If you go back to that map for a moment, I changed it to what I think is the best case scenario right now, to Bob's point, for the Democrats. So if they win in let me just reset it for a moment so it comes up. So if they win Ohio, that's the Sherrod Brown race. So if I lean that blue, right, and Montana, the Tester race, if I lean that blue, see 50-50, that Walz would be the tiebreaker. But to Bob's point, Texas and Florida are down, unless there's an upset with Cruz or Scott, you're not doing it. May, your thoughts on control of the House and Senate and how that's all playing in here to what's going on in the presidential campaign trail?
Yeah, I mean, the polls, the statistics are in favor of Republicans taking both. And I think I'll just focus on Montana for a second, then Ohio. So Montana, yes, you do have a current sitting Democrat who was reelected in 2018. So that seems like maybe the Democrats can do it. But that was a little bit of what I think felt like a consequence-free decision for voters in Montana because Trump was the president. So it's okay to vote for a Democrat Senate maybe because, the policies are going to end up being what you like because you've got Trump in the White House. And in Ohio, this is a state that has trended more and more and more red. And so, yes, you've got a sitting Democrat in Sherrod Brown. And Sherrod Brown has been running a ton of advertisements. I lived in Ohio until a few seconds ago. And Ohio just enshrined abortion access. There are things that might make you as a Democrat think that there's a possibility here. But J.D. Vance also was supposed to be a close race, and it simply wasn't. So I think that these are pretty reliably they're going to go for the Republican. And so I don't really see a lot of hope if I was hoping for a Democrat Senate, which I'm not.
You'll probably want to, I know you're not, I know you'll probably want to weigh in on this, Kurt, a little bit too, given your experience on Capitol Hill, which is fine. I want to get back to Michigan as well and just focus on this event before it starts. Get one other point in on that, which is this. If you look on the tablet at the top issues that Bob's organization, The Hill and Emerson College polled on, it's the economy across the board. So right here is Michigan. So Michigan's 44% economy, 11% threats to democracy, 10% housing affordability. But all the states are basically saying that. What about that from the Democrats' point of view? If that's the biggest issue and Trump has the advantage, which many times he does in the polls, how does Harris overcome?
The same way that Democrats have, quote, overcome that the last couple election cycles. Remember, in the 2022 midterms, according to every poll conducted, the economy was the number one issue, followed by crime and immigration. And what ended up happening? No red wave. It was just barely a trickle. In fact, Democrats gained more seats in the Senate that election cycle, despite having a president who was unpopular, despite the economy being upside down, people having a low approval rating of the administration. Pollsters always have this question. The economy is always number one. Right. But when it comes to voting, we always see a bit of a different outcome. And I think that the only thing that really matters that you can really predict future behavior is looking at past voter behaviors. And what this tells us is since Roe was overturned, at the polls, Democrats outperform these numbers, despite the fact that the economy is always number one and Republicans always have the advantage. Somehow, Republicans are not making the gains that they should have, given all those dynamics. The reason for that is women's rights and abortion. And Democrats are running the exact right campaign to capitalize on that. And Republicans at this point have been running the exact wrong campaign.
One note of caution on that, though, Kurt. And Bob, you brought it up. I'll make a quick point, and then we'll squeeze a break in here before Trump, is that you want to talk about outperforming the polls. That's what Trump's done also. Not just Democrats in some of these off-year elections. Trump traditionally outperforms, as you pointed out.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, listen, and Republicans also, and I agree with Kurt, I mean, that was a big shock. There was no red wave based upon the polling. But Republicans have better candidates this year, especially in the Senate. There's no Herschel Walker, who was one of the worst congressional candidates I've ever seen
I covered
in
that
Georgia.
One.
He was terrible. But that doesn't mean they're going to win, and neither side can get cocky. This is going to come down. Some of these Senate races and House races, they could go on for a week, if not more, and the presidential could go on for a week.
Oh, good times again. Yeah. We'll look forward to it. Just getting flashed. I just got like, well, I got to start getting the shakes again. All right, Bob, thank you. And May and Kurt, thank you as well. Stay with us as our coverage continues.